Welcome to Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft, the founder and CEO of Judith Heft and Associates, Financial and Lifestyle Concierge. This year, she's celebrating 27 years in business. In every episode, Judy interviews professionals who help others successfully manage their financial lives. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Judy is the author of 2 books, How to Be Smart, Successful, and Organized with Your Money for a Better Today and Tomorrow, and her latest book, Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles, How to Successfully Manage Money in Every Decade of Life. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Now, here's the host of Mastering Your Financial Life, Judy Heft.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to episode 91 of Mastering Your Financial Life. And I'm Judy Heft, President and CEO of JHA, Judith Heft and Associates. And today I'm really excited to be here with Cari Rincker. Cari is a general practitioner. She's the founder of Rincker Law, and she's admitted in New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Connecticut, which is phenomenal. It really gets her around. And her practice really concentrates on food, agricultural, family law, matrimonial law, trust and estates law. And she really means it when she says she's a general practitioner because she does everything. So I'm really thrilled to have Cari here. Oh, and she's also an adjunct professor at the University of Illinois. So it's really great to have someone so varied and smart and knows so much about the law. Thank you, Cari, for being my guest.
Judy, I'm excited to be here and congratulations on 91 episodes. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited about it too. So, I know that you work with a lot of farms and maybe our listeners aren't really into farms, but I think it's really all the same. So how do you help families with estate and business and succession planning? How do they know what they're going to plan? What if their family isn't interested in taking over the business or the farm? Then what happens? And who's the next possible person? How do you work with families in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So in way of background, I am a farm girl. I grew up on a family farm in central Illinois. We raised cattle and I grew up showing cattle in 4-H and FFA. And that's really where my roots are with the food and the agriculture industry. But really, farms and agribusinesses are a family business, and it's very similar to any other kind of family business, whether or not it's a dry cleaner or a shoe store or like my mom owns a computer company. So any other kind of family business that exists, these same principles come into play. And I'll tell you that it is a real issue right now for farms and family businesses to be thinking about their succession plan and whether or not that they have an heir that's interested in taking over the business. So I think, whenever I'm having consultations and planning meetings with farms about their estate and succession plan, one of their very candid conversations is, well, what is the game plan? Is there an heir? Are there a couple of heirs that are interested in gaining the insight and the managerial responsibility to carry the business to the next generation?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think a lot of times maybe that next generation isn't planning for that. And so that's another aspect, another thing to think about. So yeah, you work with a lot of different kinds of people. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, sometimes the older generation thinks that, an heir is interested in taking over, but they might have other plans or they thought that later on in life. So I think that identifying whether or not that there is an heir and then maybe talking about the timeline here. And without all that being said, I believe very strongly that estate and succession planning is a dynamic plan, that what is true in 2024 might not be true in 5 years or in 10 years. And so this is something that really needs to be constantly revisited.
And so how far in advance do you suggest to people that they plan if they're thinking of a succession plan or an exit strategy? When should they start thinking about it? Because I think with a lot of people, it could be like the last minute thing. They finally say, you know what, I'm fed up with this. I don't want to do it anymore. What am I going to do?
Okay, you can't. This cannot be something that's at the last minute. I can only speak for myself because, I am a farm girl. I am also an heir to a family farm myself. And my father is continuing to farm right now, but we're in the place of now having very candid conversations about the transition of things. And in my mind, I feel like it will take me really a decade to learn, probably even more than that, to really learn the institutional knowledge that my father has about the in and the outs of things. My mom is the bookkeeper for the business, right? And all of her institutional knowledge there. So this is not something that is done, in a year or 6 months. This should really be something that's a multi-decade plan.
That's so interesting too, though, to me to hear, because, I grew up in the family business too. It wasn't a farm, it was a clothing business. And, I feel like my parents started grooming me when I was about 12 years old, because, they would bring me to New York on buying trips. And, as I got older, I worked in the store, of course, and then college summers I was there. They gave me a lot of responsibility. And, when they went on vacation, they left me in charge. And I feel that that was really the basis for me being an entrepreneur. That business, the retail economy changed. And so I didn't really end up staying in that business even after they retired. But the thing is, it really groomed me, and it taught me how to be a businesswoman. And I think, I feel like I was born to be an entrepreneur, and I really learned a lot of great skills from my parents, and they really helped me, to give me that formation and that basis. So, you can't start too young, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. So, what are some advantages of using trust within the estate plan?
I think there's multiple advantages in using trust. And first and foremost, one of the reasons why I love them is that it offers an ability for anyone, whether or not that they are a business owner or not, to avoid probate, right? So, and what advantages does avoiding probate have? Well, if you are a business owner, if you are in a farm, then you can just transfer the assets instantaneously without having to go through the probate process. The probate process is a public process. It is in court. There are court filings. There's publication stages. And this process, if things go well, could be a year or a little bit less than a year. And if things go awry, then it could be a multi-year process. So it allows to avoid probate and have the assets immediately transfer to the heirs. Okay. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with a client of mine that I did their trust. The grandfather, I guess, so to speak, had recently passed. And the family was asking me, well, what do I have to do? What do we have to do now? And the only thing that we had to do was file the will, because there was a trust. There was nothing that needed to be redeeded, and it just really simplifies the administration process there. The second big priority, and maybe some people don't care about this, I guess I do, is privacy, because nothing is filed in the court. That it allows for privacy. I know that some people are like, why would I care? I'm dead. But, for others, for farm families, as business owners, multi-generational family businesses, keep maintaining that privacy can be a really big deal. And the third advantage with trust could be with estate tax planning and tax planning. So those are three big advantages to trust in my mind.
So for a trust, does it really matter or depend on the size of the estate? Like, what if it's a very small estate, or what if it's a very large estate? Does it still need to go? Will it still avoid probate for a large estate? How does that work?
So, Judy, I don't know if you remember Susie Orman, but like Susie Orman, she would always give people grades, and she would instantaneously give people an F if they did not have a revocable living trust. And I wouldn't go that far. I don't think that trusts are really for like everybody, but I think it's for almost everyone. And, if you own real estate, I think you need to have a trust. In Illinois, where I'm sitting right now, if you have more than $100,000 of cash assets, then you'll have a probate estate. If you are liquid in cash, then you should think about a trust. If you have children, you should think about a trust. So I think that there's a lot of reasons, and a lot of people in different stages of their life should consider having a trust. I think, when they have children, when they own real estate, or if they get to become cash liquid, I think they really need to be considering one.
So why do you think someone would want to choose an irrevocable trust over a revocable trust?
So irrevocable trusts are helpful for Medicaid planning, for people who might think about going into a nursing home and want to make sure that they are protected with the look back period. Right. So I have one client right now who's in Florida, and I have an associate attorney who's licensed in Florida. That's one of the few states I'm not licensed in. And what we did for that family is that we actually formed a revocable and an irrevocable trust. So some of the assets that they just wanted to put away and not really have access to immediately, we wanted to for sure shelter that in case they went into a long-term care facility. So the disadvantage of an irrevocable trust is you lose control. You're no longer the trustee. You're no longer managing the money along those lines. So, and it is irrevocable. It's not modifiable. So, there are some advantages and disadvantages, but one of the key advantages, as you point out, is for folks who are interested in Medicaid planning, kind of sheltering their assets for long-term care.
Oh, so that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I wasn't always a little confused about why someone would want an irrevocable trust, because it's irrevocable. And I was wondering what the difference was. So thanks for clarifying that. So let's take a little break here now, Cari, and then we'll come back. We're talking to Cari Rincker, an attorney admitted in many states.
Hey there. I just want to tell you a little bit about my new book that just came out called Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles. And here it is. It's how to successfully manage your money in every decade of life. I co-authored this with my CFO, Liz Levy. And together we created this manual that's going to help you through every stage of life. We talk about having a baby. We talk about young adulthood, pre-retirement, what to do when you're at that age of retirement. If you're contemplating divorce, do you need an estate plan? We cover all of these, each subject in a different chapter. And I really think that you're going to find this so helpful, because at the end of every chapter, we have checklists that you can look at and you can use, and they can be a guide for you. So this is a wonderful manual that we've created. It's available on Amazon. You can also find it on our website at judithheft.com/book. And we're here for you. If you need anything, reach out. I hope you enjoy the book. Here's another picture of it, just so you know what's going on. Here it is. And I'm really proud of it. It's my second book. And I'd love to have you read it and give me your feedback. Judy Heft, judithheft.com, financial and lifestyle concierge, celebrating 26 years in business. And over the years, I've learned so much. And what I've been trying to do is impart a little bit of this knowledge to you, so I can help all of you become as financially organized as I am.
And we're back here. Thank you. With Mastering Your Financial Life, we're talking to Cari Rincker, and I'm Judy Heft. So Cari, you said, planning a succession plan, you recommended at least a decade in advance, but what about, when do you think that people should look at their estate plan? I know that there's different cutoffs, like, getting married, having a baby, getting older, but what do you think? What are really the professional ideas of times to look at estate plans?
I think the sooner the better. I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head with a few life moments, right? When people get married, they have children, they get a divorce, so on and so forth. I mean, I know for myself, I, of course, wanted to try to get my estate plan in order whenever I had children, right? But I think the thing with estate planning is that it kind of makes people want to put it off. It doesn't feel urgent to them, right? And it's easy, right? Life is busy. And I could tell you that pre-children, the only reason why I got my estate plan done one day is that I treated it like a client deadline. I put it on the calendar. I'm having a will signing ceremony on such and such a date. And I tell you, we didn't get my own estate planning documents done until about the day before. But I would encourage people listening to this, if you are one of the people that have been putting this off, to put it in your calendar. to make it a deadline. And I think that's human nature to put it off. Another big piece of advice when I speak on this issue publicly is that a lot of people like to have like the perfect estate plan, right? But I don't think that it needs to be the perfect estate plan. I think get something in place and then perfect it over time, right? So, but not having things in place can be devastating. And I actually don't think that there's any age that's too young. I mean, I know that you and I probably know of devastating stories of people that have died in their 20s. And, I just think that it's something that's prudent for everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that if somebody who is fresh out of college needs to have a revocable living trust necessarily, perhaps they own real estate, right? But I think that it really just needs to be visited soon and visited periodically as life goes on.
So I've come across people in my years of doing business that don't have a will. And one of the reasons they don't is because, like you said, perfection paralysis, I guess you could call it. But another thing is, like, if they have children, they don't know who to leave as the guardians of their children. And that's really kind of foolish. And I have said to them in the past, just pick someone now that you think could be good. You can always change it. Don't wait. That's so important. What if something happens to you and your partner? And the next thing you know, your children are a ward of the state. So, how do you advise people on those kinds of things when, like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's great advice. But, there's other things that you really do need a will, especially for.
Judy, it shocks me. It shocks me how many people don't have wills. And in fact, actually a few years ago, I think whenever COVID hit and I was at home more and I was trying to think of things to do, I actually did a survey. This survey was specifically geared towards different segments of the food and agriculture industry. And I recently revisited the statistics from that survey. This is a non-scientific survey, but only about 80% of those people had a will in place and at all. And then only about 60% of those people said that they had an estate plan. So I thought that was interesting that not everybody who has a will believe that they had an estate plan. But I think it's just something that people have got to get done. They've got to get done, especially if you have children. I recently have my own podcast that recently published an episode with Rachel Cottrell, and she had children, and within the first 3 months of her having her firstborn, she got a trust put in place. And I think that really just needs to be part of the thinking. If you have kids, you get a will. It might not be perfect, and maybe you revisit it a year or two later.
That's such great information. I know it's a little scary to me. And it's also shocking to me that so many people don't have a will. They keep procrastinating and putting it off. And I just say, just do it. You have to have something in place. It's kind of frightening. So that's really good information. And I like that what you reminded people, just, it's perfection paralysis. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be changed a lot. So that's great. So on one other note, so what are some succession tips for multi-generational families? That's a tongue twister that you like to advise on.
Judy, business owner to business owner here. I don't know about you, but one of the big goals that I have had as a business owner for the last decade is to work on things like operation manuals. Okay. And when I go and I speak about succession planning, I think a lot of business owners sometimes forget about simple tools like putting processes in writing. Right. And I am personally terrified about what would happen if my father ended up in the hospital for a week, a month, a couple months. Will I be able to find the important information for the farm? Do I know what the feeding rations are for the cattle? So on and so forth. And I think the more that we can get family businesses, business owners in general, to start documenting those procedures. And this is, by the way, not a simple task. And it might take many, many years to develop. That really helps with the succession plan.
That's really helpful. I know when I put my operations manual together, I worked with somebody, and it is kind of daunting. But like you said, it could take years, and it's constantly evolving. Ours isn't a Word document, so things can change in there all the time whenever anybody needs to update. So that's a really important part. So tell me a little bit about your podcast, The Billable Mom. It sounds great.
Yeah, so I am in my second season of The Billable Mom, and I am I'm a lawyer, so I am billable, and I'm also now a mom of 2. And I got this idea, this podcast, after I had my daughter and I was holding her as a baby, and I was trying to run my whole life on my phone with my left hand. And I think there's just a real story here of working women, professional women who are trying to do it all, and it's a real feat. And so I really have enjoyed the podcast, just having conversations with other working professional women who are also mothers, and talking about their stories.
That's great. Yeah, no, I love having my podcast too. And one of the big reasons is I learned so much from all of my guests, things I had never thought about, just little tidbits. So hopefully I'm learning something and our listeners are learning. So thank you, Cari. Thanks for being a great guest. And how can our listeners find you?
You can find me at rinkerlaw.com, spelled RINCKERLAW.com. And then my podcast is thebillablemom.com.
I love it. And I'm assuming they can find you on LinkedIn too.
Yes, absolutely. I'm on social. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. So
great. So thank you so much. Thanks for being such a valuable guest. I learned a lot from you today.
Thanks, Judy. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Thank you for your positive comments and sharing this show with others.